In our last section, we spoke about how genre was determined, in part, by the core values that the genre held. Popular American film can be said to be a reflection of what has been referred to as the American genre. This is the genre of melodrama. Now, melodrama is not a genre you will often hear associated with film. When we look back at some of the old silent films, we can say that they were very melodramatic. This is always associated with overacting and outlandish scenes which seem to create drama for its own sake. Melodrama was originally a French live theater genre, which literally meant music drama. This is not to be compared to musical theater. The old melodramas were scenes that were presented, at times silently, developing into a held tableau for effect. These early melodramas were underscored with orchestral music to heighten the emotional impact of the scene, very much the same way that music is used in film to underscore the emotional content of a scene. Melodrama appealed to the masses and was picked up by the German theater, and was eventually adopted by the American theater. When melodrama ran its course overseas, it was still embraced by the American theater. This American theater tradition has moved into American film. One of the most important aspects of the melodramatic tradition is sentiment or emotion. Sentiment is the full rendering of the emotional content of the action. Emotions are thought to be beautiful in melodrama, and their expression must be performed completely. Even today in film, we gauge good acting by how emotional it is. Every melodrama had its hero. The hero was a man of admirable traits who was incapable of doing wrong. No matter what type of obstacle the villain put into the hero's way, he would always prevail because of his innate goodness. All melodrama had a villain. The villain was incapable of anything but a black heart and evil doings. It was an obligation in melodrama for the villain to be defeated. There was also a damsel in distress. This was a woman who was always at the mercy of the villain and was always saved by the hero. And melodrama was always sprinkled with colorful characters that provided comic relief for the intense battle between good and evil. It was from melodrama that the convention of the sidekick was created. The action in melodrama was dynamic. That is to say, that the situations were always active, always changing. There was always more emphasis on what action the characters were engaging in, and less on what they were thinking. The early American melodramas placed much emphasis on visual spectacle. That is to say that it always delivered spectacular special effects. America has always been fascinated by technology, and this translated very vividly on the melodramatic stage. Burning buildings, train wrecks, horse races, ship battles were all a part of the melodramatic theater. You're probably already making the connection between these elements of melodrama and the films that you watch today. Car chases, explosions, natural disasters are all a part of the melodramatic sensibility. Films and acting in them tend to be judged by strong emotions, almost always underscored with music, and using active camera techniques to heighten the emotion. But there is another important aspect of melodrama that is reflected in American films today. That is the nature of its core values. As we said in the last section, each genre can be delineated to a large extent by the core values which it holds. Melodrama arose from the formation of democracy in the 18th century. America defined itself by the democracy it formed in 1776, as did the French shortly after in the French Revolution. Democracy rejected the notion of a ruling class and placed a new importance on the masses, the common people. This was a romantic notion that was exploited by melodrama. During the 19th century, melodrama presented the world in which the status quo was what the people of the middle and lower classes wished for. People in power, individuals belonging to what could be seen as the ruling classes, were evil. The core values of melodrama, influenced by the democratic point of view, were that the simple common folk were the most important people in society. The world of melodrama is hero-driven. The main conflict is the struggle between good and evil. The hero represents the good, and the villain represents evil. The hero stands as the individual working to restore the world to a proper set of democratic principles, while the villain is a person in a position of power who tries to subvert the democratic process. The hero struggles mightily against one obstacle after another. However, in true melodrama, the good is always rewarded, and evil is always punished. It's ironic that the ultimate loner, as the melodramatic hero is often portrayed, is the only one who is capable of taking on this battle. In the 20th century, there came the development of a character type referred to as the anti-hero. It has been said that the anti-hero is different from the traditional hero, and that he doesn't share the hero's goodness. The anti-hero does, however, share the hero's struggle against the status quo. It was the cynicism of the 20th century which questioned whether those in power could be overcome by goodness that caused this shift. However, the world of melodrama still prevails, because the anti-hero still must suffer as a result of his lack of goodness. Though there have been societal adjustments to this rule in American film, movies today still operate in this democratic, hero-driven world. We still root for the individualistic hero who fights against evil power holders who attempt to subvert the core values of democracy. We can say, with few exceptions, that American films are melodramas. If we were to be precise, we could refer to genres as Western melodramas, musical melodramas, science fiction melodramas, detective melodramas, and so forth. Keep in mind that the core values of melodrama are also your core values. We rarely, if ever, dislike a movie which embraces these values. We typically dislike them because they didn't embrace them strongly enough, or they didn't embrace them realistically. But if we begin to understand how the melodramatic notion shapes our thinking as Americans, we will better be able to understand the effect that a movie has on us.